always here for you. Owen Radio.
Real Estate Pro Talk is a live radio talk show dedicated to educating its listeners on the entire spectrum of real estate matters. Part of the American dream is owning a home or investment property, or perhaps even becoming a real estate agent yourself. Paul Vanas and his team of real estate professionals have over 250 combined years of experience in the industry. In other words, we can make it happen for you. Why go down the road less traveled when we can put you directly on the real estate superhighway? Whether buying or selling in today's complicated real estate market, or if you just need advice about jumping into the real estate business for a career change, you'll need a decisive edge based on experience. Call Paul Vanas at 401-265-6144 for a free, no-obligation consultation. That's Paul Vanas at 401-265-6144.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Vanas, and welcome to Real Estate Pro Talk. This is a real estate-oriented program which will cover a variety of topics every Friday afternoon from 3 to 4 p.m. here on WOON Radio. Some of the topics we'll be talking about during our time together will be how to buy and sell a home, how to choose a real estate agent, how to choose a mortgage broker, staging a home, home inspections, and a whole lot more. I've been in the real estate business coming up on 40 years now, of which I own a real estate brokerage company, a real estate school, and a land development company. All of the knowledge that we are going to try to impart on you today is based on the continuing education classes that I teach licensed real estate agents and brokers, along with my personal experience and those of our expert guests. The goal in doing this is so you'll have the information in hand when you meet a seasoned real estate professional. You're welcome to call us today anytime at 401-766-1240 and ask any question on the subjects we'll be discussing. Our guest consultant today was Lori McPheeters from RE/MAX Town & Country in Cumberland. Welcome, Lori.
Thank you.
Lori, I've been wanting to get you on for a couple of reasons. One, real estate is a regional thing, and I know you live in Cumberland.
Yes.
And I'd like to get someone on from every region around the broadcast area of the stations. Before I get into that, I always ask everyone, how did you get in the real estate business?
Well, this is my 30th year, believe it or not. And my sister and I both got our licenses in 1989. And we're second-generation realtors. Our mom was a real estate agent since the 70s. And she was our first boss back then. And we've started out at a different firm with her. And then she went on to retire, and my sister and I decided, well, where are we going to go? So we went on to RE/MAX at that time, and probably somewhere in the mid-90s.
Wow.
So it's been a while.
So you're second generation. That means
Yes.
you were dragged into the business
Well,
by...
as a kid, my mother would have appointments, and very often I would go with her on
Right.
the appointments and just sit in the car. Sometimes it was a security thing where if she was meeting someone she didn't know, and at least having someone else in the car or with her, it just made her feel a little more secure. So then it wasn't really on my radar. I went to college to be an accountant and graduated from Bryant and went to work as an accountant at various corporate offices and got my license at night.
Right.
And then kind of just made the switch.
And once you got your license, you knew automatically what to do, right?
Well, yes, I had been around it enough to know what to expect. It's not always, it's highs and lows.
Yep.
But I still, in 30 years, I still enjoy it. I can't say, even in the bad times, there's always something good you can get out of it.
That's great.
Yeah, I love it.
Wow. I know you list and sell all over because I've seen your signs everywhere. I know you even have a listing right now way out in Burrillville. From the station, some land. But
Yes.
Let's talk about Cumberland a little bit. Cumberland is a very unique market. It seems to be a big draw. It's a very popular market with people. What do buyers like about Cumberland? And I ask you this because you're a Cumberland resident, right?
I am. I've lived in Cumberland since I was a child. Not my whole life, but
Right.
for a very long time.
So you live there, your business is there,
I went to school.
you do a lot of business there
Yes,
now,
exactly.
so you know
Yes.
the makeup of the animal
Yes.
looking in Cumberland.
And that's what I love about it is it's so diverse. You have $1 million homes, and then you have the everyday homes. People feel comfortable there, and everything is close by.
I see.
So you whatever you want you don't have to go far for it. And even if you work in the big city in Providence, it's 15 minutes away.
Wow.
So you're there. And we do actually, in Cumberland, we do get a lot of people who work the Boston area.
Right.
That's always been a popular, if they just can't afford the prices, as you know, outside of Boston are tremendously high. If you don't mind taking the train or, and people don't always go in every day now anyway.
Sure.
It's just a nice, comfortable place to be, I
Right.
think, for wherever you work.
Yeah, and the train is right there in Attleboro,
Yep,
right? I know
yep.
many folks over the years that I've sold houses to in Cumberland, they either take the train over at North Attleboro, where the Home Depot Plaza
Right,
is
right.
there, or the actual Attleboro station,
Downtown,
and they
yeah,
just kind
yep.
of zip through the
Yeah,
back
you just
roads.
scoot. That's right. You just scoot right over, and then you have time on the train, I imagine,
Right.
to do your work. We did see it was very popular, maybe 10, 15 years ago, probably 15 years ago, where people it was just out of reach for them to live anywhere near the Boston area, so they
Right.
started coming over the line into Rhode Island. But once the gas prices started to go up, you
Right,
saw
right.
far fewer people coming this way. It just didn't make sense.
Yep.
So. But now we'll still see it. I still have a lot of people I've sold to that one might work in South County, Rhode Island, the other one works in Boston, so Cumberland's kind of a nice way station
It's
for them
only,
to
what,
live.
15 minutes out of Providence?
Right. You're to work, and it's quick and easy to get there. Most of the population of Rhode Island lives within 15 minutes
Right.
of the state capital, so it's a fun place to live, the whole state, and very different. Cumberland is very different from South County. We're very different in a lot of ways, even the way it looks, the way it feels. So
Right.
you have to like neighborhoods. We don't have a ton of industry in Cumberland, but we have a lot of very family-oriented activities here, and I think that's what people like about Cumberland. That's what kept me here.
Yeah, I mean, and I've always told folks that asked me, like, if down in Valley Falls, right, which, the prices grow as you go north, I guess.
right.
But I tell them, hey, look, your kids are going to the same high school that the people who live in the $1 million. I mean, there's only one high school
That's right.
in Cumberland.
That's right.
And I know even the B.F. Norton School has won many awards in education. So I don't think there's any one area that has any one better education system in Cumberland, but
No, they all follow the same system, all 5 elementary schools.
Absolutely.
And wherever your kids go, I think they're on the right path because you all get to the high school at the same time.
Right.
And you follow your path from there. So, my kids went through the school systems. I went through the school system.
Right.
So it's...
and you're still sitting here today,
and
right?
yes.
You made it, right?
Yes, exactly. So I enjoy it. And, a lot of times I'll get people from out of state or who aren't familiar with Cumberland, and we get in the car, we drive around, we show them, and I try to highlight the things and explain to them how the town developed. Because we were on the Blackstone River, a lot of our industry was related to that.
Right.
You had the canal over in the Lincoln side where they would ship the goods down
Right.
the river to get them to the port and ship them
Absolutely.
out. So you had a lot of that kind of industrial growth back in the late 1800s. And it wasn't really until after World War II, I think, the farms were popular. The northern part of the town was farms. The southern part was more manufacturing and industrial. And once the farming really went out, all those farms now became little developments, little
Yep.
plats. And so the northern part of town is more the plats. The southern part, you've got smaller houses, closer together, older communities with pockets of newer things built in. But the history of the town is really fascinating. And to see it now, how it is now, I think you can almost picture what it was like then. And I have some elderly friends that give me the scoop on what it was like back in the day. It made things. It's very interesting. I think if you read the books and see the history, I think Cumberland's a fun place.
Of course, the station, we had the privilege of having Dave Balfour
Oh,
for
you
many
did?
years,
Oh,
who
yeah,
was the
he's-
town historian, and
That's
of course
right.
he knew everything about everything. And I used to love
Yep.
his stories about different pockets and different villages in northern
Right.
Rhode Island, and he would talk
Right.
about the history of it and how they began and so on and so forth.
Right.
Matter of fact, one of my favorite Dave Balfour stories is how he describes the Abbott Run Valley and how it came to be up at Grant's Mills and so on and
Right,
so forth. Very,
right.
very, very informational.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is kind of a fun. They do have a few books out too that they've written, and I've kind of brushed up on those. The pictures are what fascinate me. The really old pictures. And one of the houses I sold in town many years ago was in one of his books, and it said the main house was built in like 1680, and it's a fascinating house to be in. You're going to bump your head in every doorway
Right.
because nothing is tall, but it's quite a place. When you think that was like, King Philip War era,
Imagine that, yeah.
And then of course the monastery. You've got all the trails around there, and
Right. Beautiful.
So there's so much to do there, and like I said, it's very family oriented, and I think that's what people are
So
drawn
that's the big
to.
draw.
I think that's
you think
the
it's
draw.
a combination of location and demographic? You think
Yes,
that's
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it is. I mean, soccer program for the youth, all the different places your kids can go, and it's family. It's not just dropping your kids off and leaving them there.
Right.
It's doing things with your family. Diamond Hill Park and the monastery and all those places. They do a lot of family events, and I like that.
Let's not forget the ice cream machine.
I don't forget ice cream at all. In fact, there are a few ice cream places in town right now,
Right.
and I try to spread out.
We stop at every one of them every once in a
yes.
while, right?
Yes.
So what's the typical property that draws the most activity to a Cumberland buyer? You do this every day. You're dealing with hundreds of people on an annual basis. People calling you, people selling the house. If there was one kind of house to buy or sell in Cumberland, what do you think that would be?
Well, single family is probably most prevalent, and then the price range changes with the market.
Right.
So first-time buyer houses are a big draw for Cumberland because we have good schools, and people want to get their families started there. The $1 million homes are there,
Right.
but they're not as big a draw. You don't automatically think, I'm going to spend $1 million and I'm going to Cumberland.
Sure.
You're going to go to the water. But do they sell? Sure, because they were all built for a purpose and they're kind of awesome. So, but it's not for everyone. I find now in this market, anything under mid fours,
Okay.
you have a really good market for right now. Anything higher than that, maybe in the $500,000 plus, just a little longer to sell.
Takes a little
Not
while.
as many buyers in there. What I'm happy to see happening again, which we hadn't had in quite some time, is that buyer who's selling and then buying up.
Okay.
We
Right.
haven't had that in
Right.
a long time. When the market took a dive, people just kind of stayed where they were.
Yep.
And you would have sales, but that seller wasn't buying anything else in
Right.
town, not even something smaller, because they were moving in with family
Yep.
or doing things. And you just didn't see. And then you had the first-time buyers that were still buying, but they weren't selling anything. So you had a lot of one-shots. It's not always easy to have the domino effect, as we call it. And sometimes you have 4 and 5 houses lined up where buyer number one or seller number one becomes, buyer number one, and so on and so on. You could have 4 or 5 deals lined up, and it could be kind of tricky. But it's nice to see that people are selling and buying in the same transaction.
That's a great point, because my beef, remember about 15, it's about 15 years ago now, 14 years ago, when they came out with that first-time home buyer tax credit for buyers, the people, the buyers, at least my buyers anyway, they wanted to buy a foreclosure. So there was no move up. There was no chain where people were moving up with it. Like you just said, the typical, the first time buyer buys a house, and those folks go on and buy another house, and those folks, and the chain
Right.
of the economics of it all is so much longer than just, well, we're going to give you $2,000 as a tax credit to buy a house. So the first-time home buyer would go out and look for the least expensive house possible, and at that time, they just happened to be foreclosures. So
Right.
it was almost like a dead-end street. So that's a really good point.
Right.
So what would you say the price range of a first-time home buyer's house is in Cumberland right now?
Well,
on
not
average?
not that long ago, you could get a decent little ranch for under 200, but it's very rare to do that now.
Okay.
Small houses do exist under 200 in Cumberland, but to get a first-time buyer, which would be like a 3-bed, 1 or 1.5 bath, maybe with a garage or not, you're talking into the mid-2s now
Okay,
for
mid-2s.
something. Yeah.
All
You can get them for less.
Yep.
Maybe have to do a little bit to them.
Right.
First-time buyers in the last 15 years, ever since HGTV, they look at houses now and they want it to be sparkly when they first walk in.
Sure.
Doesn't always happen. So if you can convince them that it can look that way, spend a little less, do a little more. What you don't want to have happen is someone grow out of their house too quickly. They're going to buy the least expensive one, but they're going to start having children and they got to move in a
Right,
year or
exactly.
two. You want someone to, I think the average used to be 5 to 7 years someone stayed in a
Right.
house, but if that's average, that means there are people, many people who stay in 30, 40 years in a
right.
house. So that means some people are moving a lot quicker too.
Every 2 years, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, but if you think about it, and I hate to be trivial with money, because if you say it's the mid 200,000 range, 250, my old amortization skills is $500 for every $100,000 you borrow at 5%. So that would be somewhere around $1,250 a month for a mortgage, and juxtaposed as a rental that you might have to be forced with. Because I know there's some apartments in Cumberland that are $1,500, $1,600, $1,800 a month easy.
Absolutely. I've noticed that in the last few years that rentals have gone up. They've really, at a faster pace, I think, than mortgage, because the rates are so low right now for mortgages. But yeah, you're right. It's almost, in some cases, cheaper to own than to rent.
And there's no tax benefits with renting, so all the interest and the property taxes, you don't get that as a deduction. So the effective tax rate goes down when you own, and a lot of people don't take that into consideration.
I've always looked at renting as a means to an end. In my head, I just think everyone should own a home. And I know that's not true. Yeah. There are some people who shouldn't.
Right.
But even when I do rentals, and I do quite a few, I always qualify the people first, saying, you want to rent for how long?
Right.
Because when you're paying that higher rent, it's hard to save money for your down payment.
Absolutely.
So sometimes it's better to kind of check that, the monthly payment versus the monthly rental. And I think people, once they see that, and they think about it. And I've had several people, after they've rented, come back to me and say, okay, time to buy now. And that's great, so you kind of keep that relationship going, and hopefully that's how it works. So it does work that way sometimes.
And of course, I know real estate's based on location, and location, there's different locations in Cumberland, obviously, that have different price ranges. So this is kind of an unfair question, but is there a particular area in Cumberland that draws more than other areas? I mean, I know it's easy to say, well, you're in the $1 million neighborhood, you go to the $1 million neighborhood, and you have the 200,000.
Right.
But
the nice thing about Cumberland too is that no matter where you are, you can probably get a house in a first-time buyer price range. So even if you're in northern Cumberland, Arnold Mills areas, they may not be flashy, but you can still get them in those neighborhoods.
And location.
That's
right.
Right. Well, that used to be the top three things, right? That's what they would say. What are the top three things people look for when they're buying a home? Location. But I did notice that's changed.
Really?
Location is still one, but it's always price range now and the condition of the house.
Okay.
So if you get a nice house in a not so nice area, that might not sell it.
Right.
But if 2 out of 3 of those, the price, the location, and the condition, are there, you can probably make it work.
Wow.
So I'm, if you have any skill at redoing a house, go to the best neighborhood you can for the price.
Right.
And then redo it, and because whatever you do to it, the value is always going to be there.
Now, are you seeing a lot of that? Like when I bought my first house,
a couple of years ago.
I'd come home at 2:00 in the morning with plaster dust in my hair and paint in my teeth and everything else. Do you see the younger people doing that anymore?
No, I don't see it a lot. I have to say that, but I do try to have the young people say, "Look, do you have anyone in your family who can help you with this, or any friends?" I'm not, because if you have to pay for it all outright, it defeats the purpose. You've got to do a little bit of the sweat equity yourself, and we did that for my daughter when she bought, because my husband was able to do that for her. But not everyone has that resource. And if you don't, and it doesn't interest you, then go for the sparkly house. Go for the one that's got the granite, the hardwoods, the stainless appliances, because you don't want to have to deal with that after. Some people don't want to take down wallpaper and paint. To me, that's minimal. That's,
Yeah, the demographic has certainly changed. I mean, the people that live across the street from us don't cook.
They go out to eat every meal.
Yeah, I mean, we had to lend them a pot one day to go boil. I think
water?
they were boiling raviolis or something. They didn't know how to boil raviolis because it's a completely different lifestyle. I'm sure when you and I came up, we wanted what our parents wanted, or what our parents had. With the house, with the barbecues in the yard,
but our parents knew how to do things too to help us.
Right.
To do, whether it was taking wallpapering or painting or fixing the roof or, carpentry, that sort of thing. It was, you just pass that down from generation to generation. Now, my kids aren't interested in that.
Really? Now, do you think they're not interested in it because we never taught them, or do you think they're not interested in it because they have something better to do? I mean,
it could be both. It could be both. they're not interested in it because they have other things, I think, that interest them more.
Right.
And that, that immediate gratification doesn't come from, redoing your bathroom.
Right.
That takes too long.
Yeah.
So, but it's such an improvement. It's such an accomplishment when someone stands back and go, wow, look what we did.
Right.
And now you've added value. And that's the name of the game. You don't want to let your house just sit there and get too old looking. You know what I mean? Because because when you go to sell it, that is the hard part. That is, for the young people looking at it, they don't want to see paneling anymore. They don't want to see, pink appliances or, pink fixtures in your bathroom. So it's really hard. You don't have to go top end. You just have to kind of freshen.
Just make it nice. Yeah, just make it nice.
Yeah.
And I find that the mistake that a lot of first-time home buyers make, they'll watch HGTV, and it's a first-time home buyer's house, and they're putting in, Botticino marble floors in the kitchen that they're not going to get back because, but they can, guys, folks, listeners, linoleum is still a great product,
Right.
A good functional linoleum.
Right,
if you got
right.
pets, if you got kids, some top quality linoleum, and it looks great,
Right. Yes, and it's nice. I always, if it's something beyond your ability, hire someone.
Right.
Because there's nothing worse than listing a house that was done by the do-it-yourselfer that didn't know what they were doing themselves. And so, painting is kind of easy, but, if you're going to do plumbing, you're going to do electrical, you're going to do carpentry, kind of know what you're doing.
Well, Well, when you meet someone for the first time, Lori, so your brokerage business, you do a lot of business with buyers and sellers both.
Mm-hmm,
You don't just specialize in one or the other. What are some of the things that you ask potential clients the first time you meet them? Like if a buyer came to you and said, Lori, we'd like you to represent us in finding our home. What's the type of questions you ask them?
Well, a lot of times, because a lot of information is available to first-time buyers now on the internet, they come with preconceived notions. So I try to explain to them how I think it's going to work best with us working together. So if I set them up to receive emails based on what they're looking for, it will work better. But 9 times out of 10, they're still going to go look in the other sites and find things that aren't what they told me.
Right.
So I think we just have to be open-minded. I think that's the one thing I talk to, especially first-time buyers. You have to be open-minded. Give me your list of desires, but if it doesn't have this, just about anything, if the location is there, just about anything in that house can be changed.
Really?
So if you want a 2-bathroom house and it only has one, that can change at some point. If you have a no garage and there's room to put one and you want a garage, if it doesn't have it now, that can change. So I just really try to tell first-time buyers, be open-minded.
Right.
It's not going to be like you see on TV. It doesn't happen in 30 minutes like the TV shows. You have to put a little time in, and I don't want people going willy-nilly either. Kind of get an idea of the towns you like, the price range, get pre-qualified, of course. That's really probably the first question I always ask them, have you been pre-qualified?
Go see a banker, go
You
see a
have
mortgage
to,
person.
because you have to know, just because you can afford a certain amount, you got to feel comfortable with that amount. And so you have to do a little homework first, and then we start looking. We don't just start looking because it's a pretty house.
Right.
So, because you don't want to get disappointed.
Yeah, plus I'm sure the orders are very tall at first. There's a tall
and I don't mind that. I
want a house on a cul-de-sac on 9 acres with
with a
four-car
water view,
garage and the whole 9 yards,
Yes.
and then of course you start.
Okay, start paring that down.
Right,
so
right.
the must-haves, if you have 4 kids, you need a certain number of bedrooms.
Right.
If you have, so there are certain things you have to have. Some things would be nice to have. So just keep an open mind. That's what I tell them.
I wish my parents listened to that growing up and I didn't have to share a bedroom with my brother. That would have been great.
Yeah, we had to share for a little while too, but that's all right.
So when you meet a buyer and you ask them these questions, that's where the journey begins. I mean, it's not like, you're going out with them, of course, the first time out, really not to sell them anything. You're going out with them first time out to actually find out what they're looking for. Right.
And they have to trust me. And I have to, be on their side. They have to understand I'm not the enemy. I'm on their side, and they have to trust my instincts because I've been doing it a long time. So when they see a house that they love. They saw something on an open house and they come back and say, we love this house, we have to make an offer on it. Now I haven't seen it.
Right.
So it's hard. So I'm asking them questions. Well, what kind of heat did it have? Sometimes you get, well, I don't know, but the rooms were warm.
Right.
So, I have to, that makes me a little nervous.
Yeah.
So we really have to get to know each other first. And I do oftentimes like to have them come into the office and meet with me so we can look at things online together, and then I'll get an idea of what they like, and then we kind of tailor it down from there.
Wow.
They don't always want to do that because especially young people, they're not phone people. They're not, sit down people. Everything is online.
Go.
Yeah.
Go.
So
Wow.
we make it work though.
That's great information. Well, we're going to take our first break, and we will be right back with Lori McPheeters of RE/MAX Town and Country.
Real Estate Pro Talk is a live radio talk show dedicated to educating its listeners on the entire spectrum of real estate matters. Part of the American dream is owning a home or investment property, or perhaps even becoming a real estate agent yourself. Paul Vanas and his team of real estate professionals have over 250 combined years of experience in the industry. In other words, we can make it happen for you. Why go down the road less traveled when we can put you directly on the real estate superhighway? Whether buying or selling in today's complicated real estate market, or if you just need advice about jumping into the real estate business for a career change, you'll need a decisive edge based on experience. Call Paul Vanas at 401-265-6144 for a free, no-obligation consultation. That's Paul Vanas at 401-265-6144.
Welcome back to Real Estate Pro Talk, and we're still here with Lori McPheeters of RE/MAX Town and Country in Cumberland. Your office is on Diamond Hill Road?
Yes.
It was 2081, if I remember that
2081,
right?
yes,
Yeah.
right next to Dave's Marketplace.
I was
yes.
in that office for a
a
few years.
Yes,
Yep,
that's where we
I
met.
remember it
Yes.
well. First, real estate tip, folks. Hot water taps, your hot water in your sink, should really never be used for cooking. Hot water can produce or excite chemicals that are in the water system, that are in the piping system. The lead that's in pipes, it's in solder in pipes. It can actually activate the lead that's in pipes. So I've done it. You're in a hurry to boil some water for a pot of spaghetti, so you put the hot water on, and you fill the pot with hot water, and then you throw it on the stove so it'll boil that much faster. But really, they're saying now that you shouldn't do that. You should always use cold tap water whenever you're drinking or cooking. So please try to avoid that hot water. I know if you're going to put a cup of tea in the microwave, use the cold water and put it on for an extra minute. So, having said that, Lori, what are the common mistakes you see buyers and sellers make?
Well, let's go to the sellers first. I love working with sellers, and I probably 60% of my business is on the selling side. People who haven't bought or sold in a long time have a preconceived notion of what it's going to be like to sell a house. And things have changed a lot, even in the 30 years I've been doing this. So it's changed. So I think the hardest thing to get past when you go in to view a house for the first time, some people have lived in this house forever, and they dig their heels in right away. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to fix anything. This house was perfectly fine for us. And I think that's short-sighted because things are different now. And the buyers that are looking now are young people buyers who aren't familiar with home ownership. And so we're not saying give away the farm, but there are a few minor things you can do to make your house more appealing and just in general to make it a more pleasant experience.
Sure.
So I don't think digging in your heels is really a good way to start the relationship. Again, now this is a seller. They have to trust me that I've been doing this long enough to know how the psychology of how the sale goes.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of information that I've just gathered through the years just by observing what people like, what people don't like. And I know you've lived in your house a long time and you love it the way it is and it was perfectly fine, but to make it appealing to the masses, that's really what you want to do. And I'm not saying spend a lot of money.
Right.
I'm saying just certain things to remove from your walls, declutter, that sort of thing,
Right.
especially if you've lived there a long time. people that have lived in a house a long time have collections.
Right.
And I've always tried to explain to them, you're going to be moving anyway. Why don't you pack those collections in a box
Exactly.
and take down the family photo, the communion picture from your from 1970,
Yep.
anything like that. Because we're going to be taking a lot of pictures in your house.
Right.
And when we put those pictures online, that's your first showing.
That's a good point.
You know what I mean? So you have to make it as less as not, I don't want to say plain, but just take out any distractions that people are going to see. So when your pictures go online, they're looking at the space, they're looking at the window placement, they're looking at things that aren't going to be there when you leave.
Right.
So just take down all your personal items. And when someone goes to list a house, I always say the rule of thumb is if you have a horizontal surface, one item goes on it.
Really?
Don't put your collection of thimbles from every state on top of the
Yeah,
counter.
yeah.
Just put one piece in the middle. Because when it goes online and the pictures are there, people want to see what's there, what's staying with the house. And They don't
Exactly.
want to be distracted by a lot color or different things that they don't understand.
The baseball card collection,
Yes,
the moose on the wall.
Right. So, and I've seen it, and I think people who have lived in their houses a long time are proud of their collections, and they should be.
Right.
I understand that, but you're going to be moving anyway. Get a jump on the packing, pack and then just put all your boxes in one place. We won't take pictures of all your boxes.
Right, exactly.
We're going to take pictures of your living room that has the minimal amount of things in it so people can kind of see. I like taking pictures of rooms. I like taking pictures to show what it offers you. I'm not so much going to take a picture of your bed and your bedspread. You know what I mean?
Right.
It needs to be the whole room. I'm not taking this for a magazine shoot.
Sure.
It's going to try to represent the best part of your house.
Yeah.
In your kitchen, you can clear everything off your countertops.
Right.
I know, and I go around with them just before the pictures, and I say, let's get a laundry basket. We'll put everything in the laundry basket, and we'll move it to this side of the room, and we'll take pictures of the other side.
Makes sense.
But because I know they need their coffee pot, I know they need their knife block, I know they need those things on their counter with their everyday use. But for the pictures, let's just try to.
Yeah, because you're not only representing them. I mean, you're representing them in a legal sense, in an agency sense, but you're also a marketing agent because the 4 P's of marketing: product, price, presentation, and positioning. You have to present that property a certain way to get them the highest possible price in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of inconvenience. And it's not like it was years ago when I try putting a listing on MLS and I put one picture. I get people that call me that say, they're not going to look at it until I put more pictures.
It's very true. Buyers don't like that.
Yeah, years ago we used to just get them in the back seat of the car, bring them over, and say, "Oh, look, I know there's a bass on the wall here, but you can take that fish off the wall and you can paint this and do that."
Right.
And it was more of a hands-on thing.
Right.
You're right with this virtual marketing.
I still like that. The hands-on, being with people,
Right.
and the service. I like the service of being with the client. I'm not just typing or texting or whatever. I like to be with them,
Yeah.
whether it's the seller or the buyer, just to go over things that they can. So they get a feel. I'm not just spewing things out that that they have to do. I make suggestions.
Right.
And then I try to say, look, if you were looking at this room online, what would you want to see the most?
Yeah.
Do you want to see your curtains, or do you want to see that the windows, open the
Absolutely.
curtains, and so we can see how much light comes in?
Yep.
So yeah, it's very important to get good pictures. I find, because like I said, that is your first showing.
Yeah, virtual marketing.
I find that I show houses so much less often now,
Yep.
but the ones that come already like it.
Right.
They like
They
it
had a
from the
feel- they
pictures.
have a
That's
feel
right.
for it before you even walk in the door.
Right. So I think it's very important to have pictures that represent the house. You don't want to misrepresent the house with pictures.
Yeah.
You want to show what's there, but you might have a bathroom that's not up to snuff, and maybe one is and one isn't.
Right.
Take a picture of the nice bathroom.
Right, exactly.
There's just certain things, or you have your shower curtains old and dingy. Put a white one there.
Right.
There's certain things that. I like staging. I don't go crazy with staging, but I like to use what people have in their home to try to accent what's there.
Yeah. And for those of our audience who don't know what staging is when you bring in different either furnishings or pictures on the wall or different accoutrements in the house that will make it more of a model house, for lack of a better term, right?
Right. And because really, your house might be 40 years old, but you're really competing against brand new, because nothing beats brand new.
Exactly.
In most people's opinion, because new is new.
Right.
But if you want to compete with new, you got to do a few things. So you can't, just the dated things have to come out. One of my favorite pet peeves, I guess, is brass. Nobody wants brass doorknobs anymore.
Right.
And it's kind of an easy change,
Yeah.
although you have to change your hinges too in order to have the match. But it's a simple thing, but it makes a huge difference.
It does.
A really big difference. So, and I remember years ago going into a house that was built in the 60s, and this was probably maybe 10 years ago, and I'm like, something is different in this house, and I can't quite figure out what it is. Not only, those old flat panel doors that were great, they were Luan doors, or even the birch doors.
Yep.
They changed their doors, their knobs, and their hinges, and the house, it like sang to me. It
Really?
was just something so different about it.
Like
and I think
a brushed stainless or a brushed
and
nickel
you
or
didn't
something.
notice it because all houses have doors and doorknobs, but
Right.
it just gave a different feel, and it almost, it just, even a buyer looking at it couldn't quite pinpoint why it felt so different. But little things like that make a difference. Brass light fixtures.
Yep.
It's like the jewelry of your house. Change them. They're not expensive.
Yep.
If you're not familiar with electrical, have someone who knows what they're doing, change them. But if you
And
take
light
out...
fixtures are relatively inexpensive.
They're inexpensive, they are.
You can buy a bedroom light fixture for $9.
That's right. But you don't want it to be, or even like those brass chandeliers that were very popular, or those. There's certain ones you'll
The
look at
wagon
them
wheel,
and you'll
the
know
wagon
the
wheel's
wagon
not in
wheel.
style- they're not in style
You'll know.
anymore.
You'll look at
My
it.
mother had a wagon wheel.
Of course,
over the dining
everyone
room
did.
table, right?
Everyone did. So yes, so that is, those are things that if they just really change the feel of a room between anything that's brass or. I think that really makes a difference. And like I said, they're not, if you have to hire an electrician to do it for you, but most of those are do-it-yourself if you have a friend or someone who knows what they're doing.
That's a great tip for our
I
listeners.
think so. I think it makes a huge difference in the pictures too.
How about the buyers? What do you see them? What landmines does the buyer usually step on before they figure
Buyers,
out they've?
it's more about their financing, I think. They don't understand that they really, no one wants to waste time seeing something they can't afford. So first things first, you have to get in and get pre-qualified.
Yep.
And there's plenty of people to do it. If you don't know someone, wherever you do your banking, go in that bank. They're already familiar with you, so try them. Or ask your agent for some people, ask someone. You have to know before you get started where you're going to end up. So, and it's a comfort thing, I think, because if you love to stay home, you spend all your money on your house. If you love to travel, that's costly. You're going to have to scale back a little. So just because they tell you you can afford so much doesn't mean you have to.
Right.
So after that, it's you have to understand what you're looking at. So, and I know you don't. You're new. You always grown up in your parents' house or whatever if you're a first-time buyer, and they took care of all those things. But you have to know the big expenses you have that have to be there and been in working order. You don't want to have those expenses after you move in.
Sure.
Windows, roof,
The big stuff.
septic system, those are all, and heating system. Those are kind of like the big four that I always make sure my buyers understand how much life they've got left in those.
Right.
Because you don't want to buy a house and have your heating system go out the next
Exactly.
year. That's a big number.
Exactly.
And you need heat.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things. Then the things like the perks. It's nice to have a garage.
Right.
It's nice to have central air. It's nice to have your kitchen all redone. So I just, again, it's an open-minded thing.
I see.
I think they need to understand their absolute must-haves and then the things that they can wait for.
I see.
And that's just, I like to think people.
They can live with a chartreuse bathroom, but they can't live with the water coming in through the roof. Down the
Yes, exactly.
Right.
It's functional.
Right.
I've just sold a beautiful house that's under contract now, and the kitchen was all redone, but you go into the bathrooms and it's still that 1970s little tile on the floor. A year from now, it's still functional.
Right.
It's tan. It's not the color you want. Next year, save
Yep.
up your money, hire a tile guy. It'll look like $1 million next year.
right.
So, and paint does go a long way. I find young buyers don't understand that paint goes a long way to just brighten it up. Sometimes sellers have very different taste. So you go into a house and they've got the dining room painted dark red, and it looks great with their stuff, but you're like, oh no, I can't buy that house. It's got a red dining room. It's paint. Paint is easy.
Paint's easy, yeah, it's
so I think
the
the buyers,
cheapest way.
they have to understand when the buyer goes into a house, they have to understand what is going to be a huge money, suck for them, or what is going to be an easy fix, and it's going to look great.
So when you get a house, so let's flip back to the seller's side. So if someone listens to this broadcast today, and they call you later on, and they say, Lori, I want you to come over and take a look at the house. How do you market the house? What are the steps that you take to market the property?
Well, it's always nice to have a buyer all ready for that house,
right,
but you don't always have that. So we do have to market it. I'll list the house. What I try to do first, we go through the steps of how it's going to look the best. If there are some things that need to be done, I luckily have a very handy person who sometimes helps people, especially if you're a single woman or widowed, and you just, you can't get up and fix that whatever is up high. So we try to do those things right up front. But when it comes to marketing the house, pictures are so important.
Really?
Yes. And then putting it on the MLS. MLS is our first stop. Yeah. So we put the pictures on, we get everything there, and then all of a sudden magic happens, and all these websites pay for the information from our MLS, and it goes everywhere.
Right.
I love that.
So our MLS is basically the multiple listing service. So once you put a listing in there, it gets distributed. It's almost like putting it on eBay, right?
Yes. Anyone who wants to know about a house for sale in Cumberland just types in houses for sale in Cumberland, and it will take them to a variety of websites that will include information on the house. It will include pictures that I've taken. It may or may not include my name, but it will certainly include a realtor's name that someone can contact so they can come and see the house.
I see.
But for marketing, we don't market the way we used to. I know Paul and I have been doing this a long time. Remember, the Providence Journal was the only place you advertised. So people don't read the newspaper for real estate anymore. They may read it for other things. But for real estate, everyone goes online.
Right.
So you've got to, that's why the pictures are so important.
Exactly.
When you put them online, that's where they are.
Get a first chance to wow them.
That's right.
Yep.
And in the old days, you had the book. Remember the MLS book?
Books, right.
You used to get one picture in black and white, and it was already 2 weeks old by the time you got the book.
Exactly.
Now it's different, and you had curb appeal.
Yep.
All you had to do was have the outside look good, and then people would come in.
Absolutely.
Now the inside's got to look good too in order to get people there. So that's why the pictures are important. I do advertise, I do market in the Valley Breeze because it's local, and
paper,
people
sure.
read it. It's a free paper.
It's free, yeah.
And my picture's there, and house pictures are there, and they know how to reach me. I do market in that way. I don't really do too much in other periodicals.
Well, you don't have to anymore.
No,
I
don't think
it's
so.
It's all about the internet now.
Yeah,
Right? It's,
it
because
is. 90. What do they say? 95% of people now.
Right.
The number keeps going up.
Right, because
Search
you get that listing,
first,
right, and then it goes to Trulia, it goes to Yahoo
to Zillow,
Homes,
it goes to the Realtor.com, everywhere. Even I'm a RE/MAX agent, and other offices can market my property.
Exactly.
So they'll get calls. So I don't keep it a secret. We're not secret agents. We like to make sure everyone knows the property is there. So the nice thing about the way that's done now is we have access to the number of people who see it. So you can go on to the MLS and say, this was downloaded this many times. This was, sent by a real estate agent to their client this many times. And so you can use that in your marketing to say, look, it's 200 people saw this last week and we didn't have one call to show it. Something's up.
So you know.
Is it the price? Is it the pictures? Is it, where are we?
Exactly.
So
which we didn't have that yesterday.
No, it was just like, I wonder what's going on here. So
Right.
it's helpful, I think, in those ways. And prices, as you know, the most important thing when you're selling a house, pricing it right is important. And not pricing it right to sell quickly, pricing it right to sell in the time frame your seller wants to sell.
Exactly.
They may not want to move until August, but they want to list their house in January just to test the market. So list it at a price that maybe, if they get higher than they expected,
Right.
then
So
maybe...
like for example, in this market, if we're appreciating 5% per year,
Right.
You're actually playing that curve whereby in 6 months from now or 4 months from now, whatever it's going to be, that should be the price then.
That's right.
Okay.
So you just don't know. We don't have the crystal ball to know what the market's going to be like a year from now, a month from now.
Right.
But if anyone, people are always asking, how's the market? My word is unpredictable.
Right.
Because you used to be able to go historically and see how the market in the ups and downs. It's not like that anymore.
Right.
So
Plus the interest rates are what? In
the interest
threes
rates
or
are
something?
historically low.
They haven't been there in 50
No,
years.
and my first house was 10%, and when it went down to 8%, I was like, I better refi.
You're
It'll
jumping
never
for
go
joy,
lower.
right.
It'll never go lower than that, right? So it's historically low rates. People don't want to put a lot of money down now either, and that's fine. You used to put down 20% so you didn't have PMI and all those sort of things. Now they want to put down the least amount, and they do have those zero down mortgages again.
Right.
So why not?
Right.
It's
They can
borrowing
afford
money.
it.
You're borrowing money so inexpensively, you might as well. And
Might as
then
well.
I think the theory behind that is all your other money you're going to be investing for a higher,
Absolutely.
higher return. Yeah,
So
it's-
price is the key, you think?
listing a house,
Yep.
pricing a house is the key to getting it sold in the time frame you want. So, and of course, you've seen many of those multiple offer situations.
Yep.
Sometimes agents, they want to sell it quickly for a great price. They'll list it a little low. Of course, you got to work that out with your seller.
Right.
List it a little low so you get a lot of impact, a lot of people looking at it. And then you get the multiple offers. And then they outbid each other and you get higher. Of course, you run the risk of it not appraising, but
Right.
that's another whole story.
So you're wearing multiple hats. You're
Oh
wearing,
yes, you have to be
you're-
their you have to be their psychologist,
Right.
their
And
you
plus,
know, their
just
photographer.
just from
Yes.
from a marketing point
Right.
of view, because I don't have a degree in marketing, but in a way, you get a crash course degree in marketing because have to know how to position this thing in the market based
Right,
on
based-
price,
right,
and
right.
at the same time, you have to make it look good.
And you have to know the buyer pool that's there.
That's there.
So if you have an $800,000 house in Cumberland, there's not a huge buyer pool for
Mm-hmm.
that. But so you have to find those people who are willing to pay that in Cumberland.
Right.
What we used to rely on in the old days were transferees. People would come in and take a job for a few years here, and they would always buy those high-end executive homes. Nowadays, people can live in Texas and work in Rhode Island because everything you have
Internet-based.
That's right.
Right.
So you don't see as many of those transferees anymore. People, so it's more the local person buying up,
Yeah.
and there's just not as many in the higher ends in Cumberland, let's say. So you have to market it a little bit differently.
That's
I
great.
think.
Wow, that's
So,
great information. And we got 9 minutes left. Boy, this is going by fast.
Sorry, I talk and talk.
This is fantastic. So we're going to take one more commercial break, and we will be right back.
Real Estate Pro Talk is a live radio talk show dedicated to educating its listeners on the entire spectrum of real estate matters. Part of the American dream is owning a home or investment property, or perhaps even becoming a real estate agent yourself. Paul Vanas and his team of real estate professionals have over 250 combined years of experience in the industry. In other words, we can make it happen for you. Why go down the road less traveled when we can put you directly on the real estate superhighway? Whether buying or selling in today's complicated real estate market, or if you just need advice about jumping into the real estate business for a career change, you'll need a decisive edge based on experience. Call Paul Vanas at 401-265-6144 for a free, no-obligation consultation. That's Paul Vanas at 401-265-6144.
Welcome back to Real Estate Pro Talk. We're glad you're with us this Friday afternoon. It's January. Happy New Year, by the way. One more real estate tip. The fire extinguishers in your home. Everyone should really have a kitchen fire extinguisher. There's all kinds of fire extinguishers, Class A, B, C, D, E. Those designations of fire extinguishers are for different types of fire. So, for example, Class A is for paper, wood, cardboard. B is for grease, gasoline, and then C is electrical, and so on and so forth. You should always try to have a good ABC fire extinguisher in your home. That way, have it on hand, show the kids how to use it, have it in a place where it's readily accessible, because one never knows what will happen, especially during Thanksgiving with deep frying turkeys and all kinds of stuff going on. But that's our second real estate tip of the week. So, Lori, this has been great information. I'm glad you really explained some of the things to our listeners, because some folks really don't understand real estate in general. They don't understand that there's really a dollar for dollar exchange. Some things you have to put $1 into your house to get $1 back. There's other things you put $1 into your house, you get $2 back, and so on and so forth. And there used to be a chart years ago that the Realtors Association had come out with. Like if you did a kitchen, you'd
Right.
get 2.5 times the kitchen back. If you did a bathroom, you'd get 1.5. And then of course there were other things where if you put on a roof, obviously you're not going to get anything back, because
Right.
every house should have a roof that keeps the rain out. But
That's right. That's right.
So tell me, in your experience, Lori, what's the difference between a buyer's agent and a seller's agent? Because you're always changing your hat, right?
That's right.
1 minute you're a buyer's agent, the next minute you're a seller's agent.
That's right. So whoever I meet first, that's typically who I work for. So if I'm listing a house, I work for the seller, and I sign a piece of paper that says, I represent you in this transaction. It used to be agency. Now, as you know, we're called licensees.
Right.
So it's not all about taking care of the money anymore. It's confidentiality. And so
Okay.
that's the main thing. So if I'm doing an open house and people are coming in, I can talk to them about the house. Someone inevitably is going to ask, why is the seller moving? We don't really have to answer that, because
Right.
that could be something that would change the offer price
The
they would make
dynamic,
on it,
right.
right? Or they may ask, questions that are somehow going to affect. They might say, well, if they're asking this, how much would they take? Even if the seller's told me that, that's confidential information.
Right.
I don't share that with a buyer. If I'm working with a buyer, usually I get a lot of referrals. So I get, friends of friends or people I've sold
Sure.
houses to before. They come in and we sit down and we sign a form that says, I represent you in this transaction. They may be able to afford a $500,000 house, but only want to afford a $400,000 house. So when we present our offer, we say, yes, we can afford $400,000. I don't have to tell them we can go higher.
Right.
So you have to keep the confidentiality, I think, is the most important thing, whichever side you're working for.
I see.
Technically, you
Similar
can work.
to an attorney. So
That's right, that's
similar
right.
to or
That's right.
a priest in the confessional.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. So I think that's the most important thing. There are times when you may represent both sides, but there's a lot more paperwork. You have to sign things and get things approved, and you just can't really divulge anything that would really materially change anything with the transaction. So I don't want either of my buyer or seller to feel like they're out on their own, so I will still be able to help both sides. It doesn't happen as often.
great.
You think it would happen more with the advent of the internet and that people would call you directly, but I'd say most of my transactions are all co-brokes with other agents, which is fine.
And a lot of folks, some of our listeners may have not known that, because that you see a sign on the lawn or an ad somewhere or on the internet, and you automatically call that agent for information on a property, and you don't realize that agent is really representing
That
the
seller.
seller.
That's right.
Even though they're supposed to treat you honestly and fairly, you probably should have someone in there plugging for you, representing your interest as a
Right,
buyer. And
right.
you do that, right? You take on new buyers, clientele.
Oh, I do. I work with both buyers and sellers, and but I don't do it if I'm already representing the seller. I don't take on a new buyer
Okay.
for that house.
For that particular
For that
house,
particular
right.
house. If I'm already working with the buyer and then I get a listing, we put them together, that's when it becomes a little more, complicated, but it usually works out in the end. I always like it when everyone's happy at the end.
That's
At the
great.
closing, shake hands, congratulations,
wow.
and yeah, that's my favorite.
Well, we're in a good market. I mean, right now, I think we're making up for lost time from that 2010 to 2015,
Yes,
and
yeah.
I think mathematically, I like numbers, but I think we're right on that 3% appreciation line. People are saying now that, well, this is another bubble, and I don't think it is. I think we're right where we should have been all this time if that craziness didn't happen 10 years ago.
Right. Well, 15 years ago, when the market was so high, 2005, 6, and 7,
Yeah.
we're back to those amounts now.
Right.
So anyone who would have been upside down.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be anymore. We shouldn't see as many short sales as we had seen.
Yeah.
But they're still out there, unfortunately, a few of them, but there was a time that was big business.
Right. Now,
selling short sales.
Are you optimistic about this market?
I'm always optimistic about every market because I love what I do.
Yeah.
And I've been doing it for so long, and the market's been up, it's been down, it's been sideways. But I love what I do. I wouldn't change it for anything. So, yeah.
Well, we got about a minute and a half left. Why don't you give the audience your contact information,
Sure.
telephone number, website, email, and any way to contact you, because I'm sure they won't be disappointed.
Probably, yeah. The best way to reach me is just through my phone. I have a cell phone. You can text me. You can call me. My cell is 401-451-2770. And I'm sure you can find me just by my name, which is Lori McPheeters. And, just look that up and you'll find me. Just type it in. That's how people have found me in the past. It goes to different sites and my number is usually there.
Wow.
But I answer my phone. I'm one of those people, even if I don't recognize the number, I answer my phone.
That's great. Even with the robocalls now?
Yeah, I even talk to them. Yeah.
They drive you crazy.
Yeah.
Or what, they can walk into your office at
Yep, at 2081 Diamond Hill Road, right next to Dave's Marketplace, and come on in there. I'm not always in there, but they'll know where to find me.
They'll hunt you down.
That's right.
Wow,
that's
right. Great.
Great.
Well, we got about 30 seconds left. I want to thank you, Lori, for being here
My
today.
pleasure.
And, of course, good luck in the new year.
Thanks.
Good venture in the new year. Next week, there's going to be a pre-recorded broadcast because I will not be here. So next week, we're going to talk about hard money financing. And if you missed the show on that a few weeks ago, you get to listen to it again. And, of course, the show is rebroadcast tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. on WOON. So thank you, and we will talk to you next week.